Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to go through the exam review 2. If you do not have time to attend today's class, you can go through the review and make sure that you understand each questions. Some of the questions are from the exam bank and you might see these questions in the exam. So my suggestion is you understand the solutions of all these questions in the review. Let's start with the first one. Suppose in 1999, the country of Mistania had a GDP of 124,200 and a population of 550. In 2000, GDP increased to 125,700 and the population increased to 800. Between 1999 and 2000, did standard of living increase, decrease, or stay the same? For standard of living, what we know is that it's going to increase if GDP per capita increases. In this case, GDP, let's calculate GDP per capita for 1999 and then we calculate for 2000. GDP per capita is GDP, which is in this case 124,200 divided by population. This is GDP per capita, or if we divide the entire GDP equally among the people, then how much GDP each of them gets. That's the GDP per capita. And 2000 we have 125,700 and the population grew to 800. So we need a calculator, and you also need a calculator in the exam. Therefore, what we are going to do is we will take this number, which in this case 124,200 divided by 500, which is 200. You can come here and type it, $248.4 per person. And for the second one, 125,700 divided by 800, which is equal to 157.125. As you see, GDP per capita over 1 year has dropped from 248.4 to 157.125. Therefore, standard of living is decreasing. For this question, decrease is the correct answer. Question number 2. Determine whether the events listed below would promote or reduce long-term economic growth. For long-term economic growth, you need to check from chapter 7 what are the determinants. And if you just want to review here, determinants are technology, human capital, physical capital, and productivity is very important, productivity of the worker, right? And also natural resources. Okay, these are all important determinants of long-run economic growth. Research and development budgets are slashed in many private industries. This is the first event. And the second one, the amount of capital available per worker increases. So I emphasize that physical capital per worker is important, right? We might have a lot of physical capital, but we need to make sure every worker has access to the capital. The same for human capital per worker. And we know that physical capital per worker increases, so that is going to increase productivity, therefore economic growth. So the second one is going to promote, right? Second option is going to promote the economic growth. The first one is not going to, because research and development are no longer as much as before. So research and development is related to technology, and for that reason A is going to reduce long-term economic growth. Question number 3. Match the following scenarios to whether they describe the person as employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force. So to answer this question, you need to check from unemployment chapter. When we consider employed people, whom they are, okay, these people have full-time, part-time, doesn't matter, they have a job. They work even 4 hours, they are considered as employed. Or they may work for the family business, they are still considered employed, although the family doesn't pay them a check. And these are the important points. If you are self-employed, you are also employed. And for unemployed, you have to be careful, because we need to make sure that for unemployed person who needs to actively looking for work. So doesn't have a job is not enough. This person needs to look for a job, and therefore unemployed people should actively look for work. And not in the labor force is any of the people which you cannot categorize is employed or unemployed. So stay-at-home mom and dad, retired people, students who are not working, and in addition to that, disabled people, all are considered is not in the labor force. So let's look at the question. Ariel is looking for work after being laid off as the economy went into recession. So this person is unemployed because he's actively looking for work. Jose recently got laid off but is not looking for work because he doesn't believe jobs are available during the recession. So this person is not in the labor force. So I'm writing here Ariel is unemployed. But Jose is not unemployed because he's not actively looking for work. So Jose is not employed too, therefore he is not in the labor force. And the third one, Raquel works 15 hours a week and is looking for a full-time position. So as I said, even if you work for 4 hours a week, you are considered as employed. So Raquel is employed. So make sure to check the definitions before taking the exam. Question 4 is about calculating unemployment rate and labor force participation rate. And also make sure that these formulas are handy for you before you take the exam. In the first case, let's check which numbers are given to us. First, we know the adult population, right? Adult population is 14,800. And we know the labor force. Labor force is employed plus unemployed. Sometimes in the question labor force is not given, but you know that it's employed plus unemployed. And in this case, it's 11,840. And there are unemployed people, and unemployed people are given as 1,184. So first we are going to calculate unemployment rate. U rate, you need to know this formula. Number of unemployed people divided by labor force times 100. Common mistake, you shouldn't include adult population here. It has to be labor force. So U rate is going to be equal to 1,184 divided by 11,840 times 100, which is 10%. So unemployment rate is 10%. Now the next thing we need to calculate is labor force participation rate. For labor force participation rate, the formula is very simple. Let me write it in red so you can follow where I'm writing. So for labor force participation rate, LFPR, we need here labor force divided by adult population. And for a percentage, we multiply by 100. So that's been said, labor force is given 11,840 and adult population is 14,800 times 100 is going to give us a percentage number. So we're going to use calculator. 11,840 divided by 14,800, which is 0.8 or 80%. If you multiply that with 100, it's going to be 80%. So here we are going to write 80%. So the first answer is 10%, second answer is 80% for question number 4. Okay, question number 5. In 2007, the monthly cost of a typical consumer market basket was $4,000. In 2008, the cost of market basket increased to $4,025. Calculate the inflation rate between 2008-2007. If you remember, we can calculate inflation rate in two ways. Inflation rate could be calculated based on CPI, but in this question, there's no way that we can calculate CPI. But we can calculate based on cost of basket. Since inflation rate is a growth rate, the first number we should include is the cost of basket the last year, which is $4,025, minus the previous year, $4,000, divided by the previous year, times 100 for a percentage. So which is equal to 25 divided by 4,000 times 100 is the inflation rate. So let's calculate. 25 divided by 4,000 times 100 is 0. Which is equal to here 0.625%. This is the inflation rate based on cost of basket. Let's look at number 6. Between 2010 and 15, Angel experienced 8.5% of wage increase. So this is a nominal wage growth. Nominal wage growth is the growth in dollars that you receive for wage, okay? Nominal wage growth is equal to 8.5%. And the value of his regular purchases increased by 10.5%. So here 10.5% represents the inflation. And what happened to Angel's standard of living? Standard of living is determined by the real wage. So real wage, what is real wage? Real wage is the growth in purchasing power. So the real wage is answering the question whether you could be able to purchase more goods and services with the money additionally you receive with the nominal wage. Okay, so how it's calculated? It's nominal wage growth minus the inflation. So that is the idea. And here 8.5% minus 10.5%, which is negative 2.5%. So the real wage is actually shrinks, right? Compared to nominal growth. We don't see a growth in the real wage. Instead, it shrinks. So therefore, Angel's, and I make a mistake here, this is not negative 2.5, it's negative 2%. So Angel's standard of living changed by negative 2% is the correct answer. Question number 7. Determine whether the following scenarios indicate a recessionary or inflationary gap, or if the economy is at long-run equilibrium. So let's remember the long-run equilibrium. In the long run, what we have is that, if you remember your aggregate demand, aggregate supply model, there is the average price level, there is the real GDP here, and long run aggregate supply curve is vertical at potential GDP, which is YP. And we have here short run aggregate supply curve, and we have here AD curve. So their intersection, all three curves intersection represents at YP long run. Okay, let's read the scenarios. Highline gross domestic product has grown rapidly and is now beyond the potential GDP. It's somewhere here, beyond the potential GDP. So YP represents the output level we produce with full employment or fully utilizing the resources. Full employment doesn't mean 0% unemployment. It means we have an unemployment rate equals to natural rate, and we do not have cyclical unemployment. So cyclical is 0. We have natural rate of unemployment. We are fully utilizing the resources we have, and anything above YP is inflationary. So the right answer is inflationary for A. B. Midlands has no cyclical unemployment. Remember, if we are at long run, we have natural rate of unemployment, but we do not have cyclical unemployment. Therefore, B is long run equilibrium. C. Borea's gross domestic product has fallen and is now below its potential. So we are here, somewhere here. So this creates unemployment because we are producing an amount of output which is below YP. Therefore, it is recessionary. Okay, recessionary. So the third one is recessionary. Number 8. The country of Mistania's economy has a multiplier of 3. Suppose that between 1996 and 1997, spending in the country of Mistania increased from 12,400 to 12,850. Calculate the expected change in gross domestic product as a result of increased spending. If you remember, the multiplier takes the initial spending increase, and then when you multiply this number with the multiplier, we find the change in GDP. So the initial spending increase, we can calculate it because the spending increases from 12,400 to 12,850. So the initial increase in spending is 450. So this is 450, multiplier is 3. 450 times 3 is going to be 1,350 is the change in GDP. So this is how we calculate with multiplier. So the right answer is 1,350. Question number 9. Assume the country of Mistania's economy was at full employment in 1996. In 1997, a sudden decrease in investment disrupts the economy. Is this likely to lead to an inflationary or recessionary gap? So first of all, we know that in 1996, we are at full employment level. We have the P, we have Y here, and this is long run aggregate supply, short run aggregate supply, and this is AD. So we are at YP, potential GDP or full employment GDP. And sudden decrease in investment, if you remember, AD has investment. AD is C plus I plus G plus NX. And if I drops, AD drops. So AD is going to shift to the left when it drops. This is going to be new AD. And this is going to be the new output level the economy is producing. And this output level is much less than potential GDP. Therefore, this creates a recessionary. Remember, if we are producing at the equilibrium less than potential, it's recessionary. If we are producing more than potential, it's inflationary. So for that reason, right answer is recessionary. Question 10. Suppose the economy of Mistani has an adult population of 14,800 with a labor force of 11,100 and 555 unemployed people, and calculate the participation, labor force participation rate, and add the percentage sign to your answer. So let's calculate labor force participation. Labor force participation rate is labor force, which is given 11,100, divided by the population 14,800 times 100 is going to give you the participation rate. So let's get 11,100 divided by 14,800, which is 0.75 times 100 is 75%. So the right answer is 75%. Question 11. In 1996, the economy of Mistani had an aggregate demand and aggregate supply according to the following schedule. What is the equilibrium price in Mistania in 1996? At the equilibrium price, okay, let's call it P star, we expect that aggregate demand equals short run aggregate supply. Okay, so let's scroll down both these columns and see when they are equal. And when the price is 90, as you see, 90, AD is 1,450 and AS is 1,450. Therefore, the equilibrium price level is 90 in Mistani. Question number 12. We need to get the graphiting. Let's read the question first. Suppose that in 2003, Torania's people become less optimistic about the future state of the economy. Show how this event will change the equilibrium output and price level by shifting either the short-run aggregate supply or AD curve. When people become optimistic, they spend more. But in this scenario, they become less optimistic, so they are becoming pessimistic. They're not thinking the future looks good. Therefore, they're going to cut their consumption. They, for instance, not going to buy a home, or they may postpone their plan to change their car and so on. Therefore, aggregate demand curve is going to shift to the left. This is how you are going to solve this kind of questions. You're shifting the aggregate demand curve to the left because this is something negative and it's affecting consumption in the aggregate demand curve. And if the question is about aggregate supply, you need to think about the determinants of supply. Like if you remember, physical capital per labor, human capital, technology, natural resources, productivity, and short-run aggregate supply also changes by the prices. Input prices or cost of production also affects the short-run aggregate supply. Question 13. The table below shows an aggregate demand and aggregate supply schedule for Mistani in 1996. What is the short-run equilibrium output? The same idea. If you look at these both columns and scrolling down, AD equals AS when the price is 90 and the short-run equilibrium output is 1,450. Suppose that because of sticky prices, Mistania's price level becomes stuck at the price level of 100. Okay, now let's look at price level 100. When the prices are 100, aggregate demand is 1,395 and the aggregate supply is 1,485. So there is a mismatch. There is more supply than aggregate demand. So therefore, what is the excess supply? The difference is the excess supply. Okay, For this case, it's 90 units. So the right answer is 90 units. You just take the difference between aggregate supply and aggregate demand. That is the excess supply. Question 14. Suppose that between 1996 and 1997, spending in the country of Mistania increases from 12,400 to 12,440. This change in spending of $40 led to a change in income of $30. Calculate the expenditure multiplier. If you remember, for expenditure multiplier, first find initial change in spending. Initial change in spending, which is given to us, right? This is $40. And you multiply with multiplier, and at the end you find 30. So the question is, what is this number? So to find the multiplier, right, we are going to divide 30 by 40, which is 0.75. Okay, so the expenditure multiplier is 0.75. Does this example support the rule of the expenditure multiplier from Keynesian economics? It's no, because according to Keynesians, multiplier is a number greater than 1. If it's less than 1, it is not supporting the rule of the expenditure multiplier from Keynesian economics. Question 15. The economy of Mistania produces apples, strawberries, and pineapples. So we are going to use now these numbers to calculate the cost of this market basket. So let's write out the numbers so we know them. In 2000, the quantity of apples, apple here, 2. And the price is $1.90. For strawberries, the quantity is 10 and the price is 0.7. And for pineapples, 2 pineapples and 0.60 per unit. So what is the cost of basket? It's just you're going to calculate if you buy 2 apples, 10 strawberries and 2 pineapples, how much you pay. So 2 times 1.90 is the cost of apples. 10 times 0.75, which is $7, is the cost of strawberries. And 2 times 0.6, $1.2 is the pineapples. So here is going to be 3.8. If you sum all these numbers, you will find the cost of basket. Let's sum it using calculator. So 3.8 plus 7 plus 1.2, which is $12. So that is equal to $12. So the cost of basket is $12. Question 16. Match the following scenarios to whether they describe the person experiencing cyclical, frictional, or structural unemployment. Let's remember what each term means. For frictional, remember you're looking for a job that fits to your schedule, that fits to your skills, and that fits to your taste. So you're looking for a job, for instance, in San Francisco, but you're in Dallas now, you have an offer, but you reject the offer, so you're frictionally unemployed. Or you get an offer from McDonald's, but you want to work in an accounting firm, so you reject the offer, again you are frictionally unemployed, okay? Cyclical is due to recessions, okay? Recessions, when we have a recession, companies are laying off workers, that is cyclical, due to cycles of the economy. Structurals, for structural unemployment, you have a mismatch in demand for the skills. So for instance, the companies which are hiring are looking for workers who can use Excel very efficiently, and you don't have that skill, so you're structurally unemployed. Let's read each of them and find out which one is frictional, which one is cyclical and structural. First one, Ariel suppose receive a job offer in another city. So Ariel is temporarily unemployed as they move residences. This is a frictional unemployment because you're changing cities. It's more voluntary. B, Jose was employed at a tax agency, but the spread of tax prep software has left them without any clients, so they were laid off. So this is a structural change in the economy. Why? Because software is replacing the human. Therefore, it's a structural unemployment. C, the last time the stock market collapsed, Rockwell was laid off by their company to reduce labor costs. This is due to recession. Therefore, it's cyclical unemployment. Question number 17. There are 3 major determinants of labor productivity: human capital, technological change, and economies of scale. Match each of the determinants to the scenarios listed below. Let's start with the first one. Steam power makes travel by land and water faster. This is a technological change. B, as companies grow in size, they can demand cheaper inputs from suppliers. This is economies of scale. As companies get bigger, they can purchase raw materials at a cheaper rate. And the third one, as the worker gains skill in the labor market, they become more productive. This is human capital. If you remember, human capital refers to education, training, and skills of the workers. Question number 18. Suppose the country of Mistania's economy is currently in a recessionary gap. Which of the following actions could the government of Mistania take through fiscal policy to address a recessionary gap? So if you have a recessionary gap, referring to our class lectures, so let's say your short-run aggregate supply curve and AD intersects at a point, that means this is the equilibrium output, lower than the long-run aggregate supply and potential GDP. So this gap between what are sold and bought in the economy and what can economy produce, which is YP, creates a recessionary gap. So if we have a recessionary gap, remember with fiscal policy, we can stimulate AD. How? By changing G, right? You can increase G. Therefore, if you increase the G, AD is going to shift here and you reach to the full potential level. This is going to be AD new, okay? So for sure, increased spending on education and training going to shift AD. But I think we have more than one option in this case, okay? So this is one way government can stimulate the economy. The other way is government can reduce the taxes, right? When you cut the taxes, C increases, consumption increases, and it will shift the AD to the right again to reach the full potential output level. So therefore, cut taxes and increase spending is going to work. Therefore, two answers are correct. Cut taxes and increase spending on education and training are the right answers for this question. So these are the solutions for exam review 2. Please make sure that you understand them well. Go check also your assignments and solution to your assignment questions. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching this video.